The guy laughed when they called my jacket pathetic right in front of the breakfast special. Name's Walter 74, retired history teacher, with a taste for silence and black coffee. The mug in my hand. Same chipped ceramic since '83. Ever wonder what happens when the ones who really know you walk in every Sunday morning at 8:00 sharp? Walter Jennings walked through the door of the Marigold Diner and sat at the same corner booth, alone, unchanged and unbothered by the world around him. The little brass bell above the door jingled faintly as he stepped inside sunlight, tracing the edges of his worn boots. Walter moved with the sort of deliberate pace that didn't rush and didn't dawdle either. The door shut behind him, cutting off the quiet hum of Memorial Day preparations out on Main Street. Inside, the diner smelled of sizzling bacon and strong coffee, the kind that lingered in your clothes long after you'd left. Locals called him Silent Walt. Some said he used to teach at the high school. Others thought he'd just always been old. Few remembered the man behind the habit. He gave Rita a nod, the barest lift of his chin. She didn't need to ask. By the time Walter slid into booth number 3, his booth, she was already calling out the order without looking. Eggs over easy black coffee, side of cornbread, no butter. The booth creaked slightly under his weight. He took off his faded marine cap, smoothed it flat beside the salt shaker, and reached into his coat for a yellowed paperback novel. The book's spine had cracked from years of being opened to the same chapters. Walter leaned back, the diner's ticking wall clock marking time as steadily as his breath. 2 booths away, Emily Monroe sat cross-legged, laptop open but untouched. A half-drunk mug of chamomile tea sat cooling beside her notebook. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, but her eyes kept flicking toward booth number 3. She'd been in Marigold less than 3 weeks back from Austin to care for her grandmother while she recovered from hip surgery. Emily liked to write in diners, people-watching, drawing bits of conversation into characters. But Walter Jennings wasn't like anyone else in her notes. There was something about the way he folded his napkin with crisp precision, or how he adjusted the sugar jar until it aligned perfectly with the edge of the window frame. She noticed the coin-sized patch of wear on his coat sleeve, the way he read without ever flipping a page too loudly. There was silence around him, but it wasn't empty. It was full of something. Behind Walter, a pair of men tourists, by the way they dressed and laughed, broke the quiet. One of them, younger, sunburned, and too loud for a Sunday morning, pointed at Walter's jacket. "Hey, you see that?" he snorted. "Bet that thing's older than the jukebox." Rita's heels clacked sharply as she moved past them, a plate of pancakes in each hand. "Mind your manners," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Emily looked down at her screen, cheeks warm. Walter didn't move, didn't flinch. Just kept his eyes on the window where members of the American Legion were hoisting flags along Main. Red, white, and blue ribbons fluttered in the warm breeze. A banner across the lamppost read, "Marigold honors her heroes. Memorial Day. Parade Monday at 10 a.m. Walter watched the flagpole across the street for a long moment, then took the final sip of his coffee. He slid out of the booth with practiced ease, folded his napkin with care, and placed it square on the plate. At the register, he tucked a $5 bill into the tip jar, followed by a silver coin worn thin around the edges. Rita caught sight of it and blinked. "Ain't seen one of those in years," she murmured mostly to herself. Walter nodded again, cap back on, and turned toward the door. He paused just long enough to glance toward Emily. Their eyes met just for a breath. His gaze held no question, no greeting. But there was recognition in it, a kind of quiet acknowledgement that made Emily sit up straighter without realizing. Back home, Emily asks her grandmother, "Who is Walter Jennings?" Her grandmother replies, That man's forgotten more about honor than most folks will ever learn. Laughter doesn't always sound friendly in a quiet diner. Saturday mornings brought a different rhythm to Marigold Diner. The sun seemed brighter, almost impatient, as it poured through the blinds, casting long shadows across the checkered floor. Outside, the hum of passing trucks and early birds heading to the farmer's market mixed with a sharp spring warmth. The bell above the door sang out more frequently, and the coffee urn hissed in tired protest. Emily sat in her usual spot, a booth near the jukebox, its gospel station slightly drowned out by the breakfast rush. She had traded her laptop for a small spiral notebook today, pen in hand, intent on capturing fragments of this town in ink. She watched unnoticed as locals moved through familiar motions, clinking silverware, refilling sugar jars, nudging ketchup bottles into place. Walter Jennings entered at 8:02 just as he always did. Same cap, same jacket, same quiet nod to Rita. No one looked surprised. That was the thing about Walter, he moved through space like furniture. Always there, always silent. Emily keeps hearing her grandmother's words echo, "He's a man people don't look at long enough to remember." The diner had grown more crowded since the Memorial Day bulletin board went up. Now posted near the register, it bore yellowed photos of old parades, newspaper clipping, and a laminated printout listing local veterans. Emily had studied it earlier, finding herself drawn to the faded snapshot of a group in uniform, standing shoulder to shoulder in front of a long-gone courthouse. She was sketching out ideas for a story when the door swung open and in came Travis and Mia, their voices loud before the bell even finished ringing. He wore mirrored sunglasses and a tank top that clung to his shoulders like a badge of confidence. Mia followed with a camera strapped across her chest and a Starbucks cup in hand, already out of place. They slid into the booth behind Walter, oblivious to the hush they broke. Travis nudged Mia, nodding toward the corner. "Check out the hobo hat," he said, not even bothering to whisper. "Someone buy Grandpa a real meal." A beat of silence. Then Mia giggled too loud, the kind that made the silverware pause mid-clink. Rita, balancing a tray of pancakes, offered no smile this time. "Some folks prefer peace and quiet," she said, voice clipped before turning away. Walter didn't blink, didn't turn. Just sipped his coffee, his hand steady as ever. Emily's pen hovered stilled. She stared at Travis, then at Walter. The man's back was straight, his jacket freshly pressed, his plate untouched. No retort came, no glance over the shoulder. Only the silence stretching, daring someone else to fill it. She hated it. The way no one said anything, including her. Rita set a plate in front of Walter without a word. He folded his napkin, adjusted it just so, then picked up his fork. Emily's fingers tightened around her pen. She looked at the other customers. Some had looked up when Travis laughed, but now they stared down at menus or stirred their creamers with artificial interest. Mr. Halston, back in the kitchen, peeked through the pass-through window, brow's low face unreadable. The jukebox carried on softly, softly and tenderly, playing as if the song itself were holding its breath. Walter finished his eggs, cornbread gone, coffee drained to the last sip. At the register, he tucked a folded bill into the tip jar and placed the silver coin again beside it. This time, Rita noticed. Her eyes lingered on the coin as Walter turned toward the door. The bell rang again, softer now. Emily leaned forward as he stepped outside, walking with his usual measured pace. But instead of heading down the sidewalk, Walter crossed to the flagpole where one of the cords had come loose in the breeze. She watched as he retied it slowly with care, looping and pulling the knot tight, checking the length of the line. His sleeve slid back slightly as he reached overhead, revealing a glimpse of skin inked with something weathered by time. Emily raised her phone almost without thinking and snapped a photo through the glass, just one. Not for the story, not yet. Maybe not ever. That night in her room upstairs, she opened the image and zoomed in. The detail was grainy but clear enough. The tattoo on his forearm, an eagle crest wings flared and beneath it 2 small stars. It wasn't decorative. It was military. She stared at it, heart tapping like it was out of rhythm. She didn't know much about service tattoos, but she knew enough to know they weren't just for show. That was a mark of something earned. She opened her laptop, typed slowly into the search bar, Marine Eagle insignia, with 2 stars, Texas veteran. The first result, Major Walter Jennings Rhett, awarded Bronze Star 1981. In small towns, secrets are rarely hidden. They're just filed under the wrong name. The morning smelled of fresh-cut grass and sun-warmed pavement. Emily walked arm in arm with her grandmother toward the post office, the old woman's cane tapping a slow, steady rhythm on the sidewalk. Marigold was beginning to stretch and yawn into its Memorial Day weekend. Folding chairs lined the curbs like respectful guests awaiting the main act. Red, white, and blue bunting hung in loops over porch railings and store awnings. From somewhere down the street came the muffled warm-ups of a brass band, half Yankee Doodle, half squawk. Grandma Monroe's scarf fluttered at her neck, cool, as she paused beneath the library's shaded overhang. "I'll wait here," she said, motioning toward the bench. "My knees aren't in the mood for Dewey Decimal today." Emily smiled, gave her hand a light squeeze, and slipped inside the cool, dim space of the Marigold Public Library. Dust floated in lazy spirals through beams of morning light. At the front desk sat Mr. Wilkins' cardigan sleeves pushed to his elbows, a mug beside him that read, "World's Okayest Archivist." She gave a soft wave. "Morning, Mr. Wilkins. I was hoping to look at some of the Memorial Day stuff, older papers, photos." He perked up slightly. "Local history shelves. Far wall. Left of the rotary phone that don't work no more." Emily moved past a pair of teen volunteers taping up parade flyers and found the archive cabinet tucked into the corner, a row of metal drawers humming with forgotten stories. She sifted through folders marked by decade until one yellowed label caught her eye. 1981. Memorial Parade and Ceremony. Inside an old newspaper clipping, "Town Hero Prevents Training Explosion. Local Marine Recognized." The article was brief, the print faded. It referenced M.W. Jennings Camp, Pendleton, California, but no photo. Just a single sentence near the end, served with distinction. "Declined to comment." Emily's breath caught. The initials, the year. It aligned with everything she'd uncovered. She glanced around and just above the file drawer saw a framed photo of the 1981 Memorial Day Parade. Her eyes scanned it slowly, band in front, mayor in the middle, and then there, nearly at the edge, a younger Walter Jennings uniform, crisp cap, low, standing at attention. His expression unreadable even in black and white. She stepped over to the desk. "Mr. Wilkins," she said gently. "Did you know a Walter Jennings?" He looked up, blinked twice, and then leaned back. "Sure I did. Still do, I suppose. Stationed out west most years. Camp Pendleton. Trained recruits. Didn't much care for medals or speeches. Just did what needed doing. He never talks about it. He never had to. He was one of the good ones. Quiet kind. You know." Emily nodded, unsure what she was searching for, but feeling like she was getting closer. Back on the bench, Grandma Monroe looked up from her lap, where a folded grocery list rested beside a tin of peppermints. "You find what you needed, sweetheart. Not everything. But some things," Emily said. As they walked back past the diner, a sudden blast of music caught them off guard. Stars and Stripes. forever full of brass and bounce echoing down Main. The marching band had begun rehearsing in earnest, their instruments gleaming in the sun like polished memories. Across the street, just beyond the crowd, Walter stood alone near the newspaper box. He wasn't hiding, just observing. His hands rested behind his back posture, still as the flag waving gently above him. Emily crossed the street without thinking. No camera, no notebook. She simply walked until she stood beside him, shoulder to shoulder. They didn't speak right away. The music rose and fell around them, cymbals crashing like distant thunder. A little boy dropped a flag. A teenager picked it up and handed it back. The world kept turning, but for a moment it felt like everything slowed down. "They'll be marching for people like you tomorrow," Emily said quietly, her voice nearly lost beneath the drums. Walter's eyes stayed on the flag. "They'll be marching for the ones who didn't come home." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It felt respectful, shared, a kind of reverence without need for ceremony. Emily asked gently, "Will you come to the diner tomorrow?" Walter shrugged. "Same booth. Same time." No one noticed the Marines walk in until they stopped talking and stood at attention. Memorial Day. Morning came with sunlight so clear it made the silverware shine. Marigold Diner buzzed earlier than usual, the hum of conversation layered with the sizzle of bacon and the occasional clang of a spatula against cast iron. Outside, tiny flags fluttered in the breeze, lining the sidewalks like polite reminders. Inside, above the register, a new hand-lettered sign read, "Veterans eat free today. Thank you for your service." Emily had expected another ordinary Monday morning at the diner. But Walter's seat wasn't empty, and neither were his shadows. He was already seated at booth number 3 when she arrived, same as always. Jacket folded neatly beside him, cup of black coffee steaming in front. Rita had just filled it. Her hand, Emily noticed, trembled ever so slightly when she set the mug down. Across the room near the counter, Travis lounged with a toothpick in his mouth, one foot slung over the other. Mia scrolled through her phone, half listening as he muttered, "There goes Sergeant Silence." The words were barely audible, but Rita heard. She paused at the coffee pot, her grip tightening. Mr. Halston didn't turn around from the grill, but the spatula in his hand tapped the same spot twice before he went still. Emily's pulse ticked faster. She opened her mouth, unsure whether to speak up. Then the bell above the door jingled, and everything shifted. 4 Marines walked in young, square-shouldered faces, sun-browned and clean-cut. They wore dress slacks and crisp khaki shirts, sleeves rolled just so, name tags clipped neatly. Their presence drew attention like a ripple on still water. They moved with the quiet precision of those trained not to draw attention. But as they reached the middle of the diner, the one in front, a tall corporal with a faint scar above his eyebrow, halted. He turned slowly. His eyes landed on Walter. Without hesitation, he snapped to attention, hand raised in a crisp salute. The 3 others followed suit boots together, spines straight. The diner froze. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A fork clattered against a plate and wasn't picked up again. Even the low whir of the ceiling fan seemed to hold its breath. Walter looked up, calm as ever, no startle, no pride, just steady observation. Light from the window behind him cut across his shoulders, catching the threadbare patch of his jacket like a quiet badge. He didn't move. Rita, halfway to refilling another cup, remained still. Emily stood near the register, breath shallow. The lead Marine dropped his salute and stepped forward. "Sir," he said, voice low but clear. "You were the one who trained my father. He told me about the old ironback at Pendleton. We're honored." Travis, still seated, had gone rigid. He stared dumbfounded, toothpick paused halfway to his mouth. The Marine didn't sit. He didn't ask permission. He simply rested his hand on the edge of Walter's table, eyes full of something too old for his age. Walter didn't stand up. He didn't smile. He just gave a small, measured nod. And in a voice rough from years of silence, he said, "Tell your father he did good." The words landed like a soft bell toll, reverent final. Silence lingered. Then Rita stepped forward and placed a fresh cup of coffee in front of Walter. Her hand brushed his gently. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The Marines stood still for another heartbeat. Then one by one, nodded to Walter and made their way to a booth near the front. Emily glanced across at Travis. He wasn't laughing now. He wasn't even moving. His eyes were fixed on Walter, jaw tight. And when their gazes met, he gave a slow, subtle nod, not quite an apology, but not nothing either. Walter turned back to his coffee, the steam curling upward like incense. Outside, the sound of a marching band warming up echoed faintly from Main Street. But inside, for a few more moments, there was only the tick of the wall clock and the quiet awe of people realizing they'd been sitting next to something much larger than they'd ever guessed. Walter didn't like questions, but for the first time he stayed after breakfast. The midday sun filtered gently through the oak trees lining the park, dappling the worn wooden bench where Walter sat. Nearby, a low breeze rustled paper flyers left over from the morning's Memorial Day parade, and somewhere in the distance a high school band still practiced the national anthem trumpet, just a little off-key. The grass was freshly cut. The scent of magnolia hung in the air, like a slow-moving memory. Emily crossed the park's gravel path, balancing 2 paper coffee cups in one hand. She walked without hurry, the sound of her sneakers crunching gently beneath her. Walter didn't look up, but when she sat down beside him, he shifted just enough to make room. She offered a cup, black, no sugar. "Thought you might want one more." He accepted it with a small nod. The steam rose between them, softening the silence. They drank slowly. No words at first, just the quiet company of a town winding down from ceremony. Emily had promised herself she wouldn't pry. But silence sometimes asks to be filled. Walter cleared his throat low and gravelly. "There was a boy once," he said. "Private Ramirez. Too eager. Too good." Emily didn't move. She watched a pair of birds skitter along the fence line. Summer of '81. Walter continued. Training exercise. Faulty wiring in the gas line. Could have taken out the whole unit. He paused, fingers curling tighter around the cup. Ramirez spotted it. Alerted the others. Got most of them out before it blew. His voice didn't crack, but it slowed. I pulled 3 more out after. Couldn't get him. The breeze paused for just a moment, as if listening. Walter reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small, time-worn postcard. The edges were frayed, the ink faded. He handed it to Emily. The front showed a watercolor of a mission church. The back held a short note in looping cursive. "He never got to say it, but I will. Thank you for letting him become the man he wanted to be. M. Ramirez." Emily traced the handwriting with her eyes. She didn't ask why he carried it. She didn't need to. Walter set his coffee down on the bench between them and reached out as a small, scruffy dog approached, gray-muzzled and slow-moving. It sniffed at his shoes, then settled beside him without protest. He stroked its head hand, trembling slightly. The dog leaned in tail, thumping once. Emily spoke quietly. "Why haven't you told anyone this?" He took a long breath. "Because folks don't want quiet stories," he said. "They want medals." I just wanted silence. She looked out across the park where kids played tag around the war memorial, and old couples sat side by side on painted benches. Then she turned back to him. Maybe silence is exactly what people need to hear when it comes from someone who's earned it. Walter smiled first time. You might just be right, Miss Monroe. He never asked for a plaque, but someone hung up his photo anyway. The Sunday after Memorial Day dawned soft and slow, with a breeze light enough to make the American flag sway lazily outside the Marigold Diner. Morning sunlight filtered through the blinds, tracing golden bars across the empty booths, as Rita unlocked the front door and flipped the sign to open. The coffee machine hissed into life. Plates clinked gently behind the counter. The gospel radio station played something about walking through valleys with grace. Walter Jennings stepped in right on time. He paused just past the doorway, eyes lifting to the far wall near the register. There, freshly framed and hung slightly off-center, was the photo. It captured him standing head slightly bowed as 4 young Marines saluted him in front of booth number 3. The moment Emily had quietly snapped, neither staged nor announced, now lived in plain view. The light in the image caught the edges of his cap, the tilt of his shoulders, the silence he wore like a uniform. Walter said nothing, but he looked at it longer than anyone had ever seen him look at anything in public. A couple seated near the jukebox leaned toward Rita. "Who's the man in that photo?" the woman asked. Brow furrowed curiosity plain. Rita smiled just slightly. "That's Walter. He teaches people how to be quiet the right way." Walter moved toward his usual booth. As he passed by, a small dog, Scruffy Familiar, trotted in behind him. Its gray tail wagged twice before it curled beneath the table and settled in with a sigh. Around its neck, a soft blue bandana had been tied neat and purposeful. Embroidered in white thread were 4 simple words, "You're home now." Emily sat by the window, a steaming cup beside her notebook. She looked up as Walter approached, offering him the quiet kind of smile that didn't expect one back. On her page, a title was underlined, "The Man in the Booth." Walter didn't sit down. Instead, he placed a worn leather notebook on the table beside her. Its corners were frayed, the stitching loose in spots. He opened it without ceremony. The first line, written in sharp, deliberate print, read, "Private Ramirez. Age 19. Brave." They didn't speak for a long while. Scout, as Emily had named the dog, shifted slightly and pressed his chin against Walter's boot. At last, Walter reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded slip of paper. He laid it beside her notebook. "Add this if you want," he said. It was the postcard, the one with the mission church and the neat looping handwriting. Emily touched it gently, eyes scanning the words she already knew by heart. "He never got to say it, but I will." Walter nodded once. Then he turned and walked toward the door, the bell above giving a soft chime as he pushed it open. Emily looked up to watch him go. Sunlight framed his silhouette as he stepped outside. Shoulders back, head high. A man seated at the counter turned to watch him leave, then leaned slightly toward Rita and said more to himself than anyone else, "I think that's the first time I've seen him walk taller." Sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest echoes of courage. Walter Jennings never asked for praise, but through silence, kindness, and quiet dignity, he reminded a town what it means to honor without spectacle. It's easy to overlook a man in the corner booth, but it's harder to forget what he stood for once you truly see him. Like a porch light left on in the dark, one simple act of decency can guide hearts home. So next time you pass someone in silence, ask yourself, are you seeing them or just their jacket?